I never imagined my life would take such a dramatic turn after what I thought was an amicable divorce. I had rebuilt everything. New city, thriving contracting business, even started dating again. Then, the court papers arrived. Child support for a 2-year-old son. Jessica and I had been divorced for 4 years, and we never had children together. Yet there she was claiming I was the father of little Tyler. I knew it was impossible. What I did not know was how far she would go. Let me know where you are watching from today. If you have not hit that subscribe button yet, do it now to see how I proved this child was not mine, and the justice that followed when Jessica smirked at me across that courtroom. My story with Jessica began like many others. We met during our final year of college. I was studying business with a focus on construction management, and she was majoring in marketing. Our paths crossed at a mutual friend's party, and there was an immediate connection. Her laughter filled the room. Her ambition matched mine, and before long we were inseparable. After graduation, I started working for a construction company, while Jessica landed a job at a marketing firm. We dated for 2 years before I proposed on a weekend trip to Lake Tahoe. The sunrise reflected off the diamond ring as I got down on one knee, and tears of joy streamed down her face when she said yes. I truly believed we would build a beautiful life together. We married when I was 25, surrounded by friends and family who celebrated our union. The ceremony was small, but perfect, held in her parents' backyard with string lights illuminating the evening. We danced until midnight, full of hopes and dreams for our future. The first year of marriage was everything I had hoped for. We bought a small fixer-upper house that I spent weekends renovating. Jessica decorated each room with care, transforming it into our home. Weeknights were spent cooking dinner together, planning our future, and falling more in love. We talked about children, but I suggested waiting until we were more financially stable. Jessica seemed to agree, though sometimes I caught a wistful look in her eyes when we saw friends with their kids. By our second year of marriage, I had started my own contracting business. The hours were long, but the satisfaction of building something from nothing was worth every minute of overtime. Jessica supported me, initially understanding that I was working toward our future. I promised her that once the business was established, we could start the family she wanted. But as months passed, something changed. The issue of children became a point of contention. Jessica wanted to start trying immediately, while I felt we should wait another year or two. My business was growing, but still fragile, and I wanted to ensure we had savings and stability before bringing a child into the world. "We cannot wait forever," Martin, she would say during our increasingly frequent arguments. "I am not getting any younger. Just give me a little more time," I would reply. "I want to give our children everything they deserve." The disagreement festered, creating a rift between us. Jessica began spending more time away from home, going out with friends I rarely met. She became secretive with her phone, and our intimate moments grew scarce. When I would return home late from work, she was often already asleep or not home at all. By our 3rd anniversary, I sensed we were in trouble. I suggested marriage counseling, hoping to bridge the growing divide between us. Jessica reluctantly agreed, but during sessions, she would sit with arms crossed, participating minimally. The counselor suggested we reconnect through date nights and open communication, but Jessica seemed to have one foot out the door already. 3 months later, she asked for a divorce. Despite my pleas to keep working on our marriage, her mind was made up. The spark in her eyes when she looked at me had long since dimmed. "We want different things, Martin," she said, her voice unnervingly calm. "I need someone who shares my timeline for life." The divorce proceedings were surprisingly civilized. We divided our assets equally. I kept the business, she kept the house. There was no alimony since we both had careers. Within 6 months, it was finalized, and we went our separate ways. I decided a fresh start was necessary, so I moved to a different city about 2 hours away. The distance helped me heal as I threw myself into growing my business. I rented a small apartment, took on new clients, and slowly built a reputation in my new community. Weekends that were once filled with home renovation projects with Jessica were now spent hiking local trails or having beers with new friends. I met through a contractor's networking group. A year after the divorce, I felt ready to date again. I met Amanda through a client who thought we would hit it off. She was an interior designer, creative and warm, with a patient understanding of my past that I found comforting. We took things slow, both aware of the baggage relationships can carry. Amanda had been through a difficult breakup herself and appreciated our measured pace. By the 4-year mark after my divorce, life had found a new rhythm. My contracting business was flourishing with 3 employees and consistent projects. Amanda and I saw each other regularly, enjoying the simplicity of our relationship without pressure. I had even started looking at small houses to buy, feeling ready to put down roots again. Then the certified letter arrived. I remember staring at the return address from the county courthouse with confusion. Opening it revealed documents that made no sense at first glance. Child support proceedings. Petitioner, Jessica Lambert. Child, Tyler Lambert, age 2. The papers stated that Jessica was seeking child support, claiming I was the father of her son born 18 months after our divorce was finalized. The court date was set for 3 weeks away. My hands shook as I read and reread the documents, trying to make sense of this impossible claim. I had not seen or spoken to Jessica since our divorce was finalized. There was no one last night together, as she apparently claimed. It was physically impossible for me to be this child's father. Yet here was a legal document forcing me to defend myself against accusations I knew were false. That night I barely slept. My mind raced with questions and mounting anger. By morning I knew one thing for certain. I would fight this with everything I had. The morning after receiving those papers, I called Jessica, hoping there was some reasonable explanation. Perhaps it was a clerical error or a misunderstanding that could be cleared up with a simple conversation. That hope vanished the moment she answered. "I knew you would call," she said, her voice carrying a coldness I had never heard during our marriage. "It is about time you take responsibility." Responsibility for what, Jessica? We both know I cannot be this child's father. We have been divorced for 4 years, and we never had a child together. We had one last night together before you moved away, she claimed. Tyler is your son, and the court will make you support him. That never happened, I said, my voice rising with frustration. You know that is a lie. Tell it to the judge, she replied before hanging up. My hands were shaking as I set down the phone. This was no mistake. It was a deliberate attempt to extort money from me. I immediately called a lawyer friend who referred me to Brian Thompson, an attorney specializing in family law cases. Brian's office was downtown in a modest building. He was a straight-talking man in his 50s with a reputation for being thorough. After reviewing my case, he did not mince words. "We need to request a DNA test immediately," he said. "That is the quickest way to resolve this. And if she refuses, she will likely try to delay, but eventually the court will order it if we push hard enough. The concerning thing is that she named you on the birth certificate, which gives her initial legal standing." I left his office with a plan but a growing sense of dread. That evening I reluctantly told Amanda about the situation. We were having dinner at my apartment, and I watched her expression shift from confusion to concern. "I do not understand how she could make such a claim," Amanda said, pushing her food around her plate. "Does she think you will just pay without questioning it?" "Maybe she is desperate," I suggested. "Brian is going to file for a DNA test tomorrow. Once that comes back negative, this will all go away." Amanda reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I am here for you," she said, but I noticed a new reservation in her eyes that had not been there before. Over the next few days, I dove into research about paternity cases. What I found was disturbing. Men were sometimes forced to pay child support, even after proving they were not the biological father, simply because they had been named on the birth certificate and did not contest it quickly enough. The system designed to protect children could be manipulated by dishonest parents. Meanwhile, Jessica refused our request for a voluntary DNA test. Her lawyer responded that she had no doubt about paternity and would only agree to a court-ordered test if absolutely necessary. I checked Jessica's social media for the first time since our divorce and was shocked by what I found. Photos showed her with designer handbags and on lavish vacations. There were pictures of a toddler boy, presumably Tyler, but no sign of a partner or the child's actual father. Friends commented on her single mom strength, and she played the role perfectly. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned Jessica had dated several men immediately after our separation, including someone she worked with who had relocated overseas about 2 years ago. The timeline aligned perfectly with Tyler's birth, but I had no way to prove this connection. The preliminary hearing arrived. Walking into that courtroom was one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. I felt eyes on me, judging me as a deadbeat trying to escape responsibility. Jessica sat across the aisle with her attorney dressed conservatively, with her hair pulled back, the picture of a wronged mother. When the judge asked why I was contesting paternity, my attorney explained that Jessica and I had been divorced for over 2 years before the child was conceived, with no contact between us. Mrs. Lambert claims there was an encounter shortly before Mr. Peterson relocated, her attorney countered. She has named him as the father on the birth certificate and is simply seeking appropriate support for their child. The judge, an older woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, reviewed the paperwork before making her ruling. Given the dispute over paternity, this court orders DNA testing to be completed within 30 days. Until those results are finalized, temporary child support, in the amount of $800 monthly, will be assessed. I started to protest, but Brian placed a warning hand on my arm. Jessica's face flickered with a momentary smirk as the temporary order was issued. She had won the first round, and now I would be paying support for a child who could not possibly be mine while we waited for the test to prove it. Outside the courthouse, I tried to contain my anger. How can they order support before proving paternity? The court errs on the side of the child's welfare, Brian explained. But once the DNA test comes back, you will be refunded any payments if you are not the father. There is no if about it, I know, but we have to follow the process. That first support payment was the hardest check I ever wrote. I took a photo of it before sending it, documenting what I hoped would be evidence for my eventual countersuit. The stress began affecting every aspect of my life. I had to reschedule client meetings for court appearances, leading to a major customer taking their business elsewhere. My employees noticed my distraction, and small mistakes began cropping up in our work. Amanda and I started arguing over insignificant things, the tension from my case spilling into our relationship. Some friends suggested I should just pay the support to avoid the legal fees, and stressed not understanding that this was about principle, not money. I could not accept responsibility for a child who was not mine, not only for financial reasons, but because it would be living a lie. The situation escalated when Jessica began sending threatening text messages. "You can fight this all you want, but in the end you will pay one read. Everyone already thinks you are trying to abandon your son. How will your business survive when word gets out?" Through some investigative work, Brian discovered Jessica's boyfriend had left her 6 months ago, around the same time her spending habits had increased. Financial records showed mounting credit card debt and a mortgage that was underwater. The pieces were falling into place. She was not after me specifically. She just needed money, and I was a convenient target. By the time our court date for the DNA test results arrived, I was emotionally exhausted. Amanda had suggested we take a break until my legal issues were resolved effectively, ending our relationship without saying the words. I had lost 15 pounds from stress and was sleeping only a few hours each night. Walking into the courthouse that day, I felt completely alone. Jessica arrived with her mother, both of them avoiding eye contact with me. Her confidence should have wavered, if she truly knew I was not the father, but instead she appeared strangely self-assured. As we sat waiting for the judge, I overheard Jessica's mother say, "It will all be over soon," with a pat on her daughter's hand. The comment chilled me. What did they have planned if the test came back negative, as it surely would? The courtroom fell silent as the judge entered. Judge Harriman was a stern-looking woman in her 60s, who had a reputation for being fair but firm. She shuffled through the papers in front of her, adjusted her glasses, and looked up at the room. "We are here to review the DNA test results in the case of Lambert versus Peterson," she announced, her voice echoing in the quiet chamber. These results will determine the paternity of minor child Tyler Lambert. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. Despite knowing with absolute certainty that I could not be the father, a small fear lingered. What if Jessica had somehow manipulated the test? What if the lab made a mistake? The consequences would be life-altering. Jessica sat across the aisle, a small, confident smile playing on her lips. She whispered something to her mother, who nodded in response. They looked prepared for victory, which only heightened my anxiety. Judge Harriman continued. The court has received the DNA test results conducted by Life Gene Laboratory, an independent testing facility appointed by this court. She paused, reviewing the document once more, before looking directly at me, then at Jessica. The results indicate with 100% certainty that Martin Peterson is not the biological father of Tyler Lambert. The words hung in the air for a moment before their meaning fully registered. Relief flooded through me, almost making me dizzy. My attorney placed a steadying hand on my shoulder and nodded in acknowledgement of our vindication. Across the aisle, Jessica's expression transformed from confidence to shock, then quickly to indignation. Her face flushed red as she leaned to whisper urgently to her attorney. "Your Honor." Jessica's lawyer stood quickly. "My client would like to request a second test. We have reason to believe there may have been tampering with the samples." Judge Harriman's expression hardened. "On what grounds do you make this serious accusation, Counselor?" "My client is certain of the paternity, Your Honor. Mr. Peterson must have influenced the testing process somehow." The judge removed her glasses slowly. "Mrs. Lambert, the testing facility, is court-appointed and follows strict chain of custody protocols precisely to prevent such tampering. Do you have any evidence to support this claim?" Jessica stood her voice, shaking with either genuine emotion or well-practiced performance. "I know he is the father, Your Honor. There is no one else who could be." "That is not evidence, Mrs. Lambert," the judge replied coolly. "It is an assertion, contradicted by scientific testing." Jessica's composure cracked. "He must have paid someone off. Tyler is his son. Look at him." She gestured wildly toward me, tears forming in her eyes. The judge banged her gavel once. "Mrs. Lambert, control yourself or you will be held in contempt." She turned to Jessica's attorney. "Counselor, control your client." As Jessica's lawyer tried to calm her, Judge Harriman turned to me. "Mr. Peterson, the court acknowledges that you are not the biological father of Tyler Lambert. All temporary support orders are hereby vacated and any payments made will be returned to you. This case is dismissed." The relief I felt was overwhelming, but it was mixed with anger at the months of stress, financial strain, and damage to my relationships. As we stood to leave, Jessica's facade finally crumbled completely. "Fine," she shouted, ignoring her attorney's attempts to quiet her. "Maybe you are not the father, but someone had to take responsibility, and you could afford it." The courtroom fell silent at her outburst. Judge Harriman stared down at Jessica, her expression a mixture of disgust and disbelief. "Mrs. Lambert, are you admitting to this court that you knowingly falsified paternity?" Claims Jessica's attorney tried to intervene, but she pushed him away. "What was I supposed to do? The real father left the country. He does not even know about Tyler, and I cannot track him down. I needed help, and Martin has money." "What you were supposed to do," Judge Harriman said icily, "was tell the truth to this court. Your actions constitute fraud, Mrs. Lambert, and potential perjury. I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for review." She turned to the bailiff. "Please escort Mrs. Lambert and her counsel to the clerk's office. They will need to provide contact information for the prosecutor's follow-up." As Jessica was led away, the smirk she had worn in our previous hearing was replaced by panic. She glanced back at me, once her expression unreadable. Was it remorse? Hatred? I could not tell, nor did I care at that moment. All I felt was the heavy weight of months of stress beginning to lift. Outside the courthouse, my attorney shook my hand firmly. "Congratulations, Martin. Justice was served today." "Not completely," I replied, watching Jessica exit the building with her mother, both avoiding the gaze of onlookers. She put me through hell for months, lost me business, damaged my reputation, cost me my relationship. Is that all she gets? A referral to the DA who might or might not pursue charges. Brian considered my words carefully. There are other options. We could file a civil suit for fraud, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and recovery of legal fees and lost wages. I thought about it for only a moment. Let us do it, not for the money but for accountability, and for any other man who might find himself in my position someday. That decision marked the beginning of my counterattack. No longer would I be simply defending myself against false accusations. Now I would be seeking justice, actively taking control of a situation that had made me feel powerless for too long. The weeks following the DNA test revelation were transformative. With the weight of the false paternity claim lifted, I channeled my energy into building a case against Jessica. Brian and I gathered evidence, methodically creating a comprehensive record of her deliberate fraud. First, we collected testimony from mutual friends, who confirmed Jessica had admitted knowing I was not Tyler's father. One former coworker of hers even provided an email where Jessica had mentioned dating Tyler's actual father, a British consultant, who had returned to London before she discovered her pregnancy. We subpoenaed her phone records, which revealed threatening text messages she had sent me about making me pay and ruining my reputation if I did not cooperate. Each piece of evidence strengthened our case, painting a clear picture of calculated deception rather than a misunderstanding. We documented my business losses during the ordeal, including the major client who had taken their project elsewhere, when I became too distracted by court appearances to provide consistent oversight. Financial experts calculated the projected income lost from that contract alone at over $35,000. Perhaps most damning was Jessica's social media activity. Screenshots showed posts where she bragged about getting money from her ex and pictures of new purchases that coincided with the temporary support payments. One particularly incriminating post read, "When life gives you lemons, find someone with deep pockets to make your lemonade." The timestamp showed it was posted the day after she received my first court-ordered payment. Through diligent investigation, we also discovered she had consulted with 3 different attorneys before finding one willing to take her case. 2 had declined after she admitted to them she was uncertain of paternity, a fact we were able to document through sworn statements from their legal assistants who remembered her unusual candor during initial consultations. As our evidence mounted, Jessica attempted to settle out of court. Her new attorney, a somber man with a reputation for cleaning up legal messes, approached Brian with an offer to drop our lawsuit if she provided a written apology and repaid the temporary support. Not enough, I told Brian when he relayed the offer. This was not just about money. She tried to bind me to a lifetime of payments for a child she knew was not mine. She needs to face real consequences. My response must have worried Jessica because the settlement offers increased steadily over the next few weeks, first adding coverage of my legal fees, then including an additional damages payment of $10,000. Each time I refused. This had never been about money for me. It was about justice and accountability. The date for our civil trial finally arrived 6 months after the paternity case was dismissed. I had spent the intervening time rebuilding my business, repairing relationships damaged by the stress, and preparing myself mentally for one final confrontation with Jessica. Walking into the courtroom that day, I felt different than I had during the paternity hearings. No longer anxious or defensive, I was confident and resolute. Jessica sat with her attorney, noticeably thinner and less polished than before. The stress had clearly affected her too, but I felt no satisfaction in her apparent suffering. My goal was justice, not revenge. The trial lasted 3 days. My testimony recounted the emotional and financial toll of her false claims. Business associates testified to the changes they had observed in me and my work during the ordeal. Amanda even appeared, explaining how the stress had strained and ultimately ended our relationship. Jessica's defense attempted to portray her as a desperate single mother who had made a mistake in judgment rather than committed deliberate fraud. Her attorney emphasized her difficult circumstances and financial pressures, suggesting she had convinced herself of my paternity out of desperation. When Jessica took the stand, she offered a tearful apology, claiming she had been overwhelmed by single parenthood and mounting debts. I convinced myself Martin might be the father she testified. I was not thinking clearly. But under cross-examination the facade crumbled. When confronted with the timeline of our divorce and Tyler's conception, she admitted knowing it was highly unlikely I was the father. When shown her social media posts and text messages, she could not explain their calculating tone. By the time she stepped down, her credibility was in tatters. In his closing statement, Brian emphasized the deliberate nature of Jessica's fraud. This was not a mistake or confusion. This was a calculated attempt to extract money through false claims and manipulation of the legal system designed to protect children. Mr. Peterson is not seeking punitive damages to harm Mrs. Lambert, but to ensure accountability and perhaps deter others from similar fraudulent actions. The jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning their verdict. They found in my favor, on all counts, fraud, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. They awarded me damages covering all legal fees, lost business income, and an additional $50,000 in punitive damages. As the verdict was read, Jessica stared straight ahead, her expression blank. I felt no elation in victory, only a quiet satisfaction that truth and justice had prevailed. The judge informed Jessica that the findings would be forwarded to the district attorney, who would determine whether criminal charges for perjury or fraud were warranted. Outside, the courthouse reporters who had been following the unusual case asked for my comment. I simply said, "Today the system worked as it should. The truth matters and actions have consequences." That evening alone in my apartment, I felt the full impact of the journey finally hit me. I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, realizing this chapter of my life was finally closing. The vindication was real, but so was the cost. Now came the harder part, moving forward and healing. The months following the trial became a period of rebuilding and reflection for me. While the legal victory provided vindication, the emotional aftermath required its own healing process. At first, I threw myself into work, taking on new projects and expanding my contracting business. The familiar rhythm of construction became therapeutic, each completed project a tangible accomplishment I could see and touch. My attorney called with updates occasionally. Jessica had been charged with perjury, but accepted a plea deal with probation and community service rather than jail time. The judge had set up a payment plan for her to address the damages awarded to me, though I suspected I would never receive the full amount. Surprisingly, I found I did not care much about the money anymore. The principle had been established, and that was what mattered most. The hardest part was rebuilding trust in relationships. Amanda and I had attempted to reconnect after the trial, but too much damage had been done. The strain of those months had revealed incompatibilities we might otherwise have overlooked. We parted amicably, both recognizing that sometimes relationships become casualties of circumstances beyond our control. "You are not the same person I met before all this happened," she told me during our last conversation. "Is that a bad thing?" I asked. She considered it carefully. "Not bad, just different. Stronger in some ways, more guarded in others. I hope you find someone who understands that version of you." Her insight stayed with me as I navigated my new normal. I was indeed different. More cautious about who I let into my life, more aware of how quickly circumstances could change, but also more confident in my ability to weather storms. Through an online forum, I connected with other men who had experienced similar false paternity claims. Their stories varied, but the emotional impact was remarkably consistent. Many had simply paid support to avoid the battle others had fought and lost due to legal technicalities or inadequate representation. I realized how fortunate I had been to have the resources and determination to see my case through to its conclusion. This realization sparked something new in me. I reached out to a nonprofit legal aid organization that helped low-income individuals with family court issues. I offered to share my experience and eventually became a volunteer consultant, helping others navigate the complex emotional and legal landscape of contested paternity. It gave purpose to my ordeal, transforming it from a personal injury into a source of knowledge that could help others. 6 months after the trial, I received an unexpected letter from Jessica. I almost threw it away, unread, but curiosity won out. Inside was a handwritten note of apology, more genuine than her courtroom performance had been. "I know words cannot undo what I put you through," she wrote. My actions were inexcusable, born of desperation but sustained by pride and anger. The person I became during that time is not someone I recognize or respect. I am working to change not just because of the legal consequences, but because I need to be better for Tyler. He deserves a mother he can be proud of. I do not expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I truly regret the pain I caused. I sat with that letter for a long time, uncertain how to feel. Forgiveness seemed too grand a concept for what had happened between us, but I found the anger that had fueled me for so long had largely dissipated. In its place was something closer to pity, mixed with cautious hope that she would indeed become the person her son needed. I never responded to the letter, but I did instruct my attorney to work with Jessica on adjusting the payment plan when she struggled to meet the obligations while maintaining stable housing for Tyler. It was not forgiveness exactly, but a recognition that continuing to punish her would not heal either of us. As the 1-year anniversary of the trial approached, I found myself in a much different place than I had been when this ordeal began. My business was thriving with several large projects and 5 full-time employees. I had moved into a small but comfortable house with a workshop where I spent weekends crafting furniture, a hobby that had become an unexpected source of joy and peace. I had even begun dating again cautiously. Rachel was a kindergarten teacher I met while building a playground for her school. Her patience and emotional intelligence were exactly what I needed as I navigated the vulnerability of opening up again. She understood my hesitation about discussing future plans, and never pushed for more than I was ready to give. The greatest change, however, was internal. I had learned that justice, while worth fighting for, is rarely perfect or complete. I had learned that resilience comes not from avoiding pain, but from moving through it with purpose and integrity. And perhaps most importantly, I had learned that while we cannot control what happens to us, we always have a choice in how we respond. Fighting for the truth had cost me dearly, in time, money, relationships, and peace of mind. But standing in my truth, refusing to accept a lie even when it would have been easier to give in, gave me something more valuable than what I had lost. It gave me self-respect, and the knowledge that when tested I had remained true to my principles. If you have ever faced a situation where standing up for the truth seemed too difficult or costly, I hope my story gives you courage. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones most worth fighting. And sometimes the most important victory is not what you win from others, but what you refuse to surrender of yourself. Have you ever had to stand up for the truth when it would have been easier to walk away? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and justice. And if you know someone facing their own battle for truth, share this video with them as a reminder that they are not alone. Thank you for listening, and remember your integrity is worth fighting for.